U.S. Senator from the great state of Wisconsin, Senator Ron Johnson. Senator, it's so great to see you here. You know, your Senate colleague, Susan Collins, she's running for re-election in what many predicted would be a very close race. But as you know, her Democratic opponent, Graham Plattner, just dropped out after many assault allegations. Are Senate Republicans more confident now that she will keep her seat with all of the brouhaha that's happening on the Democratic side?
Good morning, Rita. Well, my guess was Susan appreciated the fact that she was going to be opposed by Graham Plattner. All depends on who they replace him with. And just, again, proves the Democrat Party is not democratic whatsoever. They set themselves up. They insert candidates like Kamala Harris for President Joe Biden. So we really don't know. You know, my biggest concern right now is that our supporters are going to be dispirited by the fact that we haven't been able to pass the Save America Act. And understand, the reason we can't do it is because Democrats oppose every election integrity measure because they want to cheat. But unfortunately, I think a lot of the message coming out of Washington, D.C. is it's not being passed because Republicans won't pass it. Now, we do have an issue with the filibuster. I've been very publicly supportive of ending the filibuster because Democrats will do so as soon as they regain the power to do it. I think we ought to end the filibuster, but we ought to do is we ought to vote. You know, we haven't even taken a secret internal vote to see exactly where the Republican senators are on the issue. I think we need to take a public vote on a rule change. That'd be a 67-vote threshold on the Senate floor. All the Democrat senators that are in the chamber now that were there voted to end the filibuster when they had the chance. It'd be very interesting to see how they would vote if they would vote to end the filibuster with Republicans in charge. But we ought to vote. They always say, you know, you're here to take tough votes, but let's take the tough vote. My guess is most Republican senators would vote to end the filibuster, even if they don't want to do so, because our supporters, our voters want us to end the filibuster to pass the Save America Act. But if we don't take the vote, I just fear we're going to dispirit our own voters. They'll end up throwing up their hands, going, what's the difference between the two parties? We need to be very aware of just that basic reality. You deny reality at your own peril.
That's an interesting point. So, Senator Ron Johnson, do you believe that vote's going to happen? And why has there been reluctance for even a vote there in the Senate?
Well, first of all, Republicans would like to retain the filibuster when Democrats are in control so we can block their destructive legislation. That's a very legitimate point of view. The difference in the conference are between those of us who believe, and I think know, that when Democrats have the House, the Senate, the presidency, they will end the filibuster. So we're saying let's do it ourselves so we can actually pass voter integrity measures before the Democrats gain all the power, and they'll turn America into one-party nation. So that's the split. You know, from my standpoint, there's a lot of Republican senators don't want to take that vote because behind closed doors, they want to retain the filibuster, but they know if they're forced to take the vote, they know their supporters. Our Republican voters want us to end the filibuster to pass the Save America Act, so they just want to avoid the vote. Realistically, I don't think we can avoid that vote. So I've let the president know he ought to ask John Thune to take a vote on the rule change. Again, that's a 67-vote threshold. Get people on the record. I have no idea how that vote would turn out. Would Democrats who voted to end the filibuster when they had the power, would they vote yes? I don't know. I will vote yes because I think the Senate is broken enough. We've ended the filibuster on all nominations. There's really not much left to the filibuster anyway. I don't see how the Senate could become more broken than it is, but we just ought to take the vote.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting point, and I think there'll be a lot of pressure to do so, especially as we're heading into the midterms. And you're right, get everybody on record. Before we let you go also, Senator, we got to talk about socialism, the surge of socialism right there in your beautiful state, and I love Wisconsin. You have Francesca Hong. She is a Democrat running for governor there in Wisconsin. And she's trying to put a very positive spin on socialism. Watch this.
I think that when folks hear socialism, they may be taken aback, but I bring it back to potholes and the Packers and public education and, issues that have broad bipartisan support and broad bipartisan opposition, like data centers, and then support for our public schools and universal childcare, lowering working class people's taxes by taxing the wealthiest few and mega corporations.
So what do you think Badger State voters are going to think about this? And how concerned are you about this very strong surge of socialism? By the way, Francesca Hong also said that she would like the state attorney general to also prosecute individual ICE agents. I mean, this is really radical, Senator.
Well, the rise in socialism is very depressing. I can understand 100 years ago, after the Great Depression, people looked for different economic models, but now we have 100 years worth of experience how socialism, communism results in tyranny, the murder of tens of millions of people. It destroys economies, it destroys nations. So unfortunately, the radical left have infiltrated successfully almost every institution of this country, religious institutions, our education system, our legacy news media. And so we don't have these institutions pointing out how destructive socialism is. And there's always the siren song of socialism, right? We're going to offer you free healthcare, free education, all this free stuff without pointing out there's nothing free. And all this socialist, all these programs destroy initiative, destroy lives, destroy families, destroy nations. So again, I don't take any joy in this whatsoever. I don't celebrate the fact that they're nominating these radical leftists like they're going to be easy to beat. I'm not so sure, because our public has not been educated to the destructive nature of socialism and communism.
Yeah, it's really a troubling trend that we're seeing across this country. A lot of people say it's a choice between common sense and crazy. Well, Senator Ron Johnson, thank you very, very much. Really great to have you here. Wonderful. Thank you.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.